And a very good morning to you. Travel and Things, in association with Rugged Wear, Real People, Real Clothing, Real Solutions, presents Series 4 of In Conversation With. I'm your host, David Batsoffen, and today I have not one, but two guests. We're going to be chatting to Michael Olivier, who is the author of Friends, Food and Flavour, together with Roelien Immelman, who is all the way in Taipei. And we'll be chatting to her. She did the designs in the book. Michael, Roelien, good morning. Welcome to you.
Hi, David.
Good morning, David.
Roelien, firstly, let's just cross to you. What time is it in Taiwan?
It's 6 hours before South Africa, so it's now 3:35. So it's afternoon.
Oh, ahead of, not behind. Okay, I thought, wow, that's so kind of you to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you look so wide awake.
It's a bit confusing because before, as in we are ahead of you. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Michael, I know where you are. You're in Leafy Linden, and you're just about to be joined by somebody who's bringing you a cup of tea. That's very kind.
My brother.
Hello, Michael's Jeff. Brother. You know, Michael, you can't just let people wander in and out of shot without introducing them.
Listen, I was desperate for a cup of tea.
Well, I'll share one with you.
Good.
Let's talk about the book which finally arrived. It's called Friends, Food, Flavour. It's published by Penguin. Roelien, sorry, I covered your name up and I shouldn't do that. And as we were saying, Michael, just before we started the recording, this book is ramped up. Are they cookbooks? Are they recipe books? Are they just books? How does one refer to them? Is there a PC term for a recipe book nowadays?
David, I don't think so. I mean, I think essentially it's a cookbook,
right?
And that was how the kernel of the thing started. There were a number of building blocks, obviously, and the first one was having done this buffet of Cape food on Voyager Wine Estate in Margaret River in Western Australia in 2001. Maddie and I took a whole series of Cape recipes, deconstructed them, and then researched each one with the different people who were food writers at the time. Okay. Cass Abrams, Philippa Chaffetz, Valdila Williams, Leipold, blah, 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 blah. And then we reconstructed them because at the time, I don't believe it's the same now, at the time, the Australian palate was way ahead of ours in terms of wanting flavor.
Really?
So that was the first, yeah.
No, they got kangaroos and koala bears. What do they know about flavor, the Australians?
They are into food in a huge way. And so I had this little kernel collection of Cape recipes, which were fully tested. And so 20 years now since then, I thought in sort of 2019, I really should do something because I'd offered it to wineries and blah, 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 and nobody was interested. Then, so that was the first thing. Then the next thing was meeting this absolutely amazing woman. She was on holiday in Johannesburg, and she had just illustrated a book for a friend of ours, Irida du Toit. And I just loved the whole feel and style of what she did. So we met and we agreed that we would partner up, and because this is a 50-50 partnership between the two of us, and that we would do the book. So I then contacted Penguin Random House. Bev Dodd was our publisher, a wonderful woman with an incredible team of people, and said, look, this is what I've got. You know, I've spoken to Roelien and we'd really like to put something together. And she came back quite excited and she said, yes, but I need another 60 recipes. So
It's always
what
like that.
started?
When you get them,
Yeah,
hungry for
absolutely.
food. Michael, I'm gonna hold you there for a moment, and let's ask
Yes.
Roelien the question. Roelien, when you first met Michael, your thoughts about recipes and your illustrations, did you think it was a marriage made in, or did you think, hey, but it's work?
Definitely not the second. So me and Michael started chatting. It was a very new age love affair because it was all on Instagram, me and Michael, and we just got each other. Michael sent me such awesome inspirational pictures and food illustrations that he's found. And then when we were chatting about putting forward a proposal, I immediately went for one of the recipes he suggested, which was the tomati breadie. I am a aspiring cook myself. I love cooking. I love the kitchen. That's why I decided to specialize in food illustration. So I started with cooking Michael's recipe for the tomati breadie, which wasn't my mother's. My mother's is very simple. And as Michael said, it was more refined. There's just a few hints of spice in there, like 3 little coriander seeds, or as well as a few, just drops of ginger. It was lovely, and it was different to my mother's tomati breadie. And the illustration that flowed from cooking the recipe was just pure love. And that was the start of the illustration. Yeah, maybe if you go to it, you can see we ended up not using any photography for that recipe, and
Trying to find it,
it came from the heart of the love of tomati breadie in our house as well.
I'm just trying to find it. It's not under tomati and it's not under breadie. Where would it be?
No, but that's what happens with indexes. Just hang on a sec, because it is.
You see, that's the one that grabbed my wife. I have to tell you, she loves category. So when she opened the book, it fell open on this page, and she went, "That's the first one I'm cooking." These are bready, so the tomati must be somewhere here. Lamb knuckle.
Because it's on page 98.
98. There we go. It helps when you have the author around who knows which pages it's on. That is a stunning illustration, Renelle.
Isn't it amazing?
Thank you.
It's beautiful. And this is what I was saying to Michael. These books, or this specific book, is so joyous and joyful that even if you're not a cook, you want to, if nothing else, but to just page through it and look at the illustrations, or buy 2 books and use one set of illustrations as wallpaper. You've just given me an idea. I think I may cut up your book, Michael. Some of these may end up on a kitchen wall somewhere, but this is beautiful. And I think, Roelien, why do I keep calling you Renelle? I'm sorry. That this may be, you may be setting a trend now. The food photography is relatively simple, or so people believe, but it's not. It's hours of work, and so is illustration. But I think you end up, an illustration in a book ends up making the book more special than just a pure photograph. My personal.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I'm very passionate about, because what happens with illustration, it adds an organic element to an otherwise computer or camera made image, So the hand-drawn lines and the paint, it adds organic component that you can't create
Now, do
in any other way.
Do you do these in watercolor, or are these computer generated? In other words, somewhere is there a file of original drawings that people could maybe purchase?
Well, there's a sketchbook of original drawings. So I definitely start with pen on paper. I start with the inking and the watercolor combination of the two, and then I will scan in the images and I will add the photography and work with it digitally. So I will move around images and lines and small bits of the illustration to fit with the text. This I will do in Photoshop and InDesign to create a whole combined image in the end. So if I combine it with the photography and the colors is not quite as I liked it, I will simply change the colors on the computer. So it will all be slightly different in the end than from when I started, which was on watercolor paper with ink and water and paint. Yes.
Michael, you mentioned when we were chatting a little bit earlier with Penguin Random House, they asked you for 60 more recipes.
Yeah.
Was it difficult? I was talking to some photographer friends when they did a book. They started out with 72,000 images and they had to cut it down to 120. And what they eventually did was they gave it to friends, people who understood photography and knew these photographers concerned, because they said it was like culling children. They didn't know what to get rid of. So was that a similar experience for you? Did you go, I think 300 recipes, how am I going to cut them down to 60?
Yeah, well, I think, when Bev, the publisher, when she said this, I want another 60 recipes. Obviously, I had a file of recipes from going back to my restauranting days, and so it wasn't that difficult to choose recipes.
Okay.
I started off with a big list, and then suddenly I thought, would it be fun if I included some of my foodie friends, people that I know and love, people that I've worked with, and so I built up a little short list of people that I wanted to contact, and they all came rushing back and said, "Oh yes, we'd love to. Thank you very much." So we got the recipes. Then the next thing was, obviously Roelien was on board then already. Then the next thing with Penguin was to get Roelien into being the sort of illustrative designer of the book. And fortunately, Helen Hen, who's the designer for Penguin Random House, was just so keen to do it. So things just sort of meshed together. And then for the photography, I wanted to use a chap called Mike Robinson. Mike is essentially an advertising photographer, but he and I did a shot of a Boschendal wine in his studio in Johannesburg with a fully feathered pheasant. I think it must have been around about, let's say, 81, 82. And we remained friends right through. And, I used to see his work. And I was really keen to have him do the photography. And he had a food stylist, Britta Duplessis. And interestingly enough, one of her assistants, Kate Ferreira, I knew her grandmother very well back in the 80s. So the whole thing sort of came together. And then on the day that they were doing the photography, they were sending us pictures, and we could say put it in a green dish rather, or swing it round 45 degrees, or whatever it was.
You see, that's why I say people don't realize how involved food photography is. Good food photography. Everybody thinks they're a food photographer because they go into a restaurant with a cell phone and they take pictures of their food from every angle, and by the time they start eating, the food is cold, and then they complain bitterly because it is. But also with good food photography, you can't eat the props afterwards because there are always things that they do to the food that makes it inedible, which is why doing food programs is much more fun, because then at least you can eat the food that they've cooked. They haven't sprayed varnish or lacquer or something. Roelien,
look, I know that they didn't use glycerine and shaving foam and these, because they all ate the dishes. They all ate the dishes afterwards and reported back.
Good.
Yeah, we were. I was very jealous.
Yeah,
we were both. I think. Well, Michael knew how it tasted, but I was drooling from afar. That's for sure.
Roelien, were there any recipes that when you got them, you sort of went, "Oh, this is going to be a difficult one to illustrate," or did they all speak to you immediately? Like the tomato bread, I know I've got this one.
No, there were definitely some challenges. The one specifically was Michael's skaap afval bootjie. So to illustrate afval and make it look appealing, afval is one of those things. It's a Marmite situation.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say on which side I'm on, but people who do enjoy afval really loves it, and it's a very nostalgic dish for them. And
right.
Aesthetically, not quite on the same level. So that was definitely a challenge. And I started off drawing all the pieces of offal, and they were kind of floating around the page. And I started to like it. I thought, yeah, it looks kind of cool. And my husband, who's an artist too, he has a visual eye, he came to have a look at it, and he was just like, I don't think the stomach should be floating around like that. So I changed my approach a little bit, and I was quite happy with the outcome. You're welcome to have a look and see what it ended up.
I was hoping that Michael would shout out the page number while you and I were talking. He didn't get the brief as how this interview was going to work. Really.
It's under offal bootjie or skaap afval maybe, or curry.
No, there's too many options. Michael,
118. 118.
Okay, I was close. 118. Again. There we go. We got to do that. And that. Okay. My late dad used to love tripe and trotters, which I think my mom cooked wearing a gas mask. Because it's not the most pleasant of smells, and he was never allowed to eat at the dinner table with us when that was presented. He had to go and eat in the kitchen with the door closed, preferably outside if possible.
Can I quickly tell you my tripe and trotter story?
Right.
Every Friday morning, my dad would go down to it was essentially a pork factory in Kales River, and it was a single two-lane narrow little country road. It's now a 6-lane highway, but the factory's still there, and it had a butcher shop on the side which sold other meats as well, and he would come home with what was known by our housekeeper, Maggie, and there's a prickly pear story about Maggie in the book, by the way. It was known by Maggie as Meneer se afval. And my mother would then take, the head had been sawn in half, and she would then use a toothbrush and clean all the channels and things. And then into the pot went 8 sheep's trotters, which had been sawn in half, and then the various flavoring seasonings, bay leaves, cloves, blah, blah, blah. And then she used to use a cider which was made in Elgin in those days called William Tell, surprisingly.
Surprise, surprise.
And then she would make a luting paste around the casserole, sort of flour and water kind of luting paste. Put the lid on, and then put it in the bottom oven of the Argus stove, which was in the farmhouse kitchen. And then on Saturday morning, while we were having breakfast, my dad would come in, and he had a little hammer, and he would break the luting paste away, open it, find a head, take a teaspoon, and eat the eyeball.
No!
And we used to
I want to see
about
your illustration of this story now.
And he said, we used to berate him, and he said, but it just tastes like hot grapes.
No, Michael. Okay, with that in mind, Michael, do you have a favorite recipe in the book?
I don't think I really do, but I think the fun that I had, there are 2 recipes in the book which are based on Louis Leipold recipes. Now, Louis Leipold was training as a doctor in London, and then he worked with Escoffier in the Savoy Hotel at night time so that he could learn how to cook. So what he then used to do was, because he had such an amazing knowledge of cookery, he would write his recipes giving the skimpiest of details. Like take a handful of breadcrumbs and add to it some cloves and bay leaves, or that kind of thing. There's a wonderful bread recipe that he has, which you bake in the oven at a temperature which would be ideal for roasting a guinea fowl.
So you've got to go and do homework. Is that what you say?
Yeah. So what I did with those recipes was I simply wrote down the ingredients and then had to create the recipe. So it's the chicken curry and the lamb bready, which Carolyn likes. Those were the two. And in fact, I'm not sure that my next book might not be a sort of like a homage to Leipold and rework his recipes for the modern cook or something like that. But I think those are Beaton. Yes. Yeah, Mrs. Beaton actually was a bit of a crook because her husband was a publisher and she actually never cooked any of those dishes. They put an advert in a newspaper and squillions of people wrote in with their recipes. Yeah, but there's some really, really stunning recipes in here, and some of my friends have come up with some absolutely amazing dishes. I mean, Christine Stevens, who is a vegetable garden designer and provider of vegetables, herbs, saladings, fruit, flowers, etc., to restaurants in the sort of Pearl area. She gave a pesto recipe for carrot tops and coriander,
Well, at least nothing goes to waste. Roelien, do you have a favorite recipe that you've tried other than the tomati bready?
Part of what happened while I was illustrating the book is I had a newborn baby. My baby was about 4 months and she was born 2 months prematurely. So it was quite a challenge. And she was around 4 months or so when I started illustrating the book. Me and Michael were working together and she was always on my lap. So I would take the nap times and I would illustrate. When she's asleep, I had to make sure I had all my brushes and my paint and everything around me because she was literally on my lap while I created the whole book. So that means, unfortunately, I haven't had as much time as I would have loved to cook the recipes. I did most of them before I got really accustomed to the recipes, because as you are illustrating, you really go over those recipes over and over to figure out who is the star of the show, and what herbs and spices and what things are very important in this flavor. So I know the recipes very well, but I haven't had time as I wanted to cook many of them. I know Helen, the designer, as Michael mentioned, she really loved the panko breadcrumb, enoki mushroom and camembert recipe, something I haven't had time to cook yet, but my sisters and my family all decided that they think they should start from the beginning and work their way through. And I would still love to do the same because I know the recipes are absolutely amazing.
But Michael, recipes and illustrations aside, you had a lot of difficulty in bringing this book to market, and I'm not blaming the publishers at all. Just landing the book in South Africa and getting them distributed turned out to be a task, almost a bridge too far.
Yeah, fortunately, it wasn't my bridge to cross; it was the publishers. But yeah, there was a 5-week delay, and of course that was pre-Christmas sales time. I haven't yet heard from the publishers as to how it's selling, but my gut feeling is that it's selling well.
Good. I just see sometimes Zoom gives you extra time, but they've just informed me that we're running out of time. So before they kill us, Roelien, I'm going to say thank you so much to you. Thank you for a beautiful, beautifully illustrated book. I wish you all the very best with it. Have fun I don't know, how long are you still in Taiwan for? Are you there for a while?
Thank you very much, David. We're not sure. We'd love to come back to South Africa, actually, with Mims, the baby. You know, I'd love her to grow up in South Africa. Hopefully we can come back soon.
Great.
When and how, I'm not sure of, but hopefully soon.
Michael, thank you for taking time to chat again. Yet another one for the collection. Michael Olivier's Friends, Food, Flavour. It's published by Penguin Random House, and it's done in conjunction with Roelien Immelman. And before I say goodbye, I have to do this once again. He says, hopefully that will work, and we'll do this very quickly, and we'll do real people, real situations, rugged wear, real people, real clothing, real solutions. Michael and Roelien, thank you so very much for joining me here on In Conversation With. And you are episode 1 of series 4 here in 2020. Thanks very much, guys. Wish you all the very best for the new year. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy.
Thanks, David. Take care. Bye, Roelien.
Bye, Michael.